Marcus Chun had always been good with his hands. Growing up in the slums of New Detroit, catching falling objects had kept him alive more times than he could count. Falling debris from crumbling buildings, dropped tools from construction sites, even the occasional wallet accidentally tossed his way by sympathetic workers. His reflexes were sharp, honed by necessity and 26 years of urban survival. He never imagined those same reflexes would get him married to an alien princess. The day started like any other aboard the mining station Kepler 442b. Marcus rolled out of his cramped bunk in the human quarters, grabbed a protein bar that tasted like cardboard mixed with regret, and made his way to the equipment bay. As the station's chief maintenance engineer, he kept the massive ore processors running while the various alien species argued over mining rights and territorial disputes. Kepler Station was neutral ground, a floating city in the asteroid belt where humans worked alongside dozens of alien races. The Zephyrians, with their blue-scaled skin and electrical abilities, managed the power systems. The rock-eating Gorvani handled heavy excavation. The insectoid Klaxi ran communications with their hive mind efficiency. And the humans? They fixed everything that broke, which was pretty much everything, pretty much always. Marcus liked it that way. Humans were seen as useful but harmless, the universal janitors of the galaxy. Nobody paid much attention to them, which meant they could observe, learn, and survive. The trick to dealing with aliens, Marcus had learned, was to be indispensable but invisible. That philosophy was about to be severely tested. He was crawling through a ventilation shaft on level 7, trying to repair a faulty atmospheric recycler, when he heard the commotion. Raised voices echoed through the metal corridors, speaking in the musical language of the Etherian Empire. Marcus knew enough Etherian to understand they were angry about something, but their politics weren't his problem. The Etherians were the closest thing the galaxy had to royalty. Tall, graceful beings with skin that shifted between silver and gold depending on their mood. They controlled the most advanced technology in known space. Their plasma weapons could cut through starship hulls like paper. Their ships moved faster than anything else in the void, and their laws were older than human civilization. Marcus finished his repair work and dropped down from the ceiling panel, wiping grease from his hands. The arguing had moved closer, and now he could make out individual voices. Someone was very upset about a marriage contract. Someone else was insisting on ancient protocols. A third voice, younger and clearly female, was telling them all what they could do with their protocols in language that would make a space pirate blush. He gathered his tools and headed for the exit, planning to avoid whatever diplomatic incident was brewing. Human maintenance workers had exactly zero business in Etherian politics. That's when she came around the corner. Marcus had seen Etherians before, but never one like this. She was tall, even by their standards, with skin that gleamed like molten silver. Her hair floated around her shoulders as if suspended in zero gravity, shifting from deep blue to violet as she moved. She wore the flowing robes of Etherian nobility, but they were torn and scorched from recent combat. Behind her came 4 more Etherians in military uniforms, their skin flashing angry red patterns. They were shouting in their musical language, demanding she stop, return with them, submit to some sort of arrangement. The woman spun to face them, and Marcus saw her eyes for the first time. They burned with silver fire, literally. When Etherians got emotional, their eyes glowed with bioluminescent energy. Right now, hers looked like twin stars about to go supernova. She raised her hand, and Marcus recognized the gesture. She was about to draw plasma. In human terms, she was reaching for her gun. Princess Larelii, one of the pursuers, called out in accented English, probably for Marcus's benefit. This behavior is beneath your station. Return with us, and the marriage negotiations can continue. I told you my answer. She replied in perfect English, her voice carrying harmonics that made the air itself seem to sing. I will not be sold like cargo to seal your political alliances. The lead pursuer, an older Etherian with scars across his golden skin, shook his head sadly. The law is clear. You are of age and unwed. The council has chosen Lord Vexton as your husband. His house will strengthen our position against the Dominion. Lord Vexton is a fool who couldn't find his own ship in a hangar, Lyrelii snapped. And I am not property to be traded. Marcus tried to edge around the confrontation, but the corridor was too narrow. He pressed himself against the wall, hoping they would ignore him. Humans were good at being ignored. The decision is made, the scarred Etherean said firmly. You will return to the homeworld and complete the bonding ceremony, or face exile. Lyraliai's skin flashed through several colors Marcus didn't recognize, settling on a deep, angry crimson. Exile? For refusing to marry a political puppet. For defying the council's will. The law of ancient binding still applies, princess. Only a duel of honor can release you from this obligation. Then, I challenge Lord Vexton to single combat. The scarred man laughed, a sound like crystal chimes in a hurricane. Vexton is a master of the plasma arts, trained in the old ways. You are skilled, but not skilled enough. Choose exile, princess. At least you will live. That's when things went sideways. Lyraliai's hand moved to her weapon, a curved device that hummed with barely contained energy. The four soldiers tensed, their own weapons appearing in their hands with fluid grace. Marcus found himself directly between them, trapped in what was about to become a plasma firefight in a confined space. The smart thing to do was hit the deck and pray. The human thing to do was try to help someone who was clearly being forced into an unwanted marriage. Marcus had never been particularly smart. Wait, he said, stepping forward before his brain could talk him out of it. Maybe there's another way. 5 pairs of glowing alien eyes turned to stare at him. He immediately regretted speaking up. The scarred Etherean looked at him with the expression someone might use to examine a particularly unusual insect. Human, this does not concern you. Continue about your duties. Actually, Marcus said, his mind racing as he tried to remember everything he'd learned about alien cultures during his years on the station. I think it does concern me. You mentioned ancient laws, right? Laws older than current political arrangements. Lyraliai's eyes narrowed, but her weapon stayed in its holster. Speak, human. Quickly. Marcus took a deep breath. This was either going to save everyone's life or get him vaporized. Among the Etherean people, there are laws governing trial by combat, yes? Ancient protocols that supersede modern politics. The scarred man nodded slowly. The old ways are still recognized, though rarely invoked. And those laws recognize substitution of champions in certain circumstances? In matters of honor, yes. But what does this, princess? Marcus interrupted, turning to Lyraliai. If you're determined to fight this, you have the right to name a champion to stand in your place, correct? Her skin shifted through several colors as she considered his words. Theoretically, yes. But my champion would face Lord Vexton himself, and he would not hesitate to kill a substitute to claim his prize. Marcus felt his mouth go dry, but he pressed on. And if your champion won? The marriage contract would be void, the scarred Etherean said reluctantly. But, human, surely you do not think to. I volunteer as Princess Lyraliai's champion, Marcus announced. The silence that followed was so complete, he could hear the station's life support systems humming in the walls. Then, everyone started talking at once. Impossible, the scarred man shouted. A human cannot serve as champion in Etherean law. Actually, Lyraliai said thoughtfully, her skin shifting to a calculating green. The ancient texts make no species distinction. A champion is one who stands for another in trial by combat. This is madness, another soldier protested. Vexton would destroy a human in seconds. That would be his problem, Marcus said with more confidence than he felt. I accept the risks. Lyraliai stepped closer to him, and he caught the scent of ozone and starlight that seemed to surround her. Human, what is your name? Marcus Chun. Marcus Chun, she repeated, and somehow his name sounded exotic and important when she said it. Do you understand what you are offering? This is not your fight. Why would you risk your life for a stranger? Marcus looked into her burning silver eyes and told her the truth. Because nobody should be forced into marriage against their will. Human, Etherean, or otherwise. She studied his face for a long moment, and he felt as if she was looking directly into his soul. Finally, she nodded. I accept your offer of championship, Marcus Chin. But, know this, if you die in this duel, I will carry that burden for the rest of my life. Then, I guess I better not die, Marcus replied. The scarred Etherean held up his hands for silence. This requires consultation with the council. Ancient law must be verified, Precedence checked. How long? Lyralii demanded. 3 days. The princess will remain in protective custody aboard this station while we research the matter. Like hell I will, Lyralii snapped. I am not your prisoner. You are our responsibility, the man replied firmly. Guards will be posted. Marcus cleared his throat. Actually, there might be a problem with that. All eyes turned to him again. This is a human-administered station, he explained. Technically, we're in human space. Your authority here is limited to your own citizens, and only by treaty agreement. The scarred Etherean's skin flashed angry yellow. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that if Princess Lyralii requests asylum with the human administration, we're obligated to grant it pending resolution of her legal status. Lyralii's eyes widened with understanding. I formally request asylum with the human government, she announced. Granted, Marcus said promptly. Welcome to human protection, Your Highness. The Etherean soldiers looked like they were ready to start a war right there in the corridor. Their leader held up a restraining hand. This changes nothing, he said through gritted teeth. 3 days to research the law. Then, the matter will be settled according to ancient protocol. We'll be ready, Marcus assured him. The soldiers departed in a swirl of robes and muttered threats, leaving Marcus alone with an alien princess who had just put her fate in the hands of a human maintenance worker. So, she said after a moment, what happens now? Marcus looked at her, taking in the otherworldly beauty, the regal bearing, the barely contained power that seemed to radiate from her skin. Now I guess we figure out how to keep me alive long enough to win this fight. Lyralii laughed, a sound like silver bells in a gentle breeze. You know, Marcus-chan, when I woke up this morning, I thought this day could not possibly get any stranger. Yeah, well, you haven't seen anything yet, Marcus replied. Come on, let me show you how humans solve impossible problems. As they walked toward the human quarters, Marcus tried not to think about the fact that he had just volunteered to fight one of the most skilled warriors in the galaxy using weapons he barely understood. Instead, he focused on the more immediate problem, explaining to his supervisor why he was harboring an alien princess in the maintenance section. Just another day on Kepler Station. Behind them, alarms began to sound as news of the asylum request spread through the station's communication systems. Within hours, representatives from a dozen different species would be demanding explanations. The Etherean Empire would be mobilizing diplomatic resources. And, somewhere in the depths of space, Lord Vexton would be preparing for a duel he expected to be little more than an execution. Marcus had 3 days to change those expectations. He was going to need all the help he could get. The first thing Marcus learned about housing an alien princess was that she didn't sleep. At least, not like humans did. He'd given her his quarters and taken the couch in the common area. But every time he woke up during the night, he could see the soft silver glow of her skin through the frosted glass door. The second thing he learned was that she was a lot more dangerous than she looked. Show me again, Lyralii said, watching him demonstrate basic plasma weapon handling in the station's small training facility. It was barely dawn by station time, but she'd been up for hours, studying human combat techniques on the station's database. Marcus hefted the training plasma rifle, trying to remember everything Chief Kowalski had taught him during mandatory self-defense courses. The key is not to aim where your target is, but where they're going to be. Plasma bolts travel fast, but not instantaneous. You do realize, Lyralii said gently, that Lord Vexton has been training with these weapons since before your species left your homeworld? He can curve plasma shots around obstacles and strike multiple targets simultaneously. Yeah, well, Marcus replied, trying to sound more confident than he felt. He's never fought a human before. Lyralii's skin shifted through several colors before settling on a worried blue-green. Marcus, I need you to understand something. In accepting this challenge, you haven't just volunteered to fight a skilled warrior. You've challenged the entire political structure of the Etherean Empire. There will be those who want to see you fail spectacularly, to prove that humans have no place in our affairs. Marcus lowered the weapon and looked at her seriously. Are you having second thoughts? Because if you want to back out, I understand. This isn't your fault. My fault. Lyralii's eyes flared with silver fire. Marcus Chun, in 300 years of Etherean history, only 12 individuals have been brave enough to volunteer as champion for another. Most of them were legendary warriors defending their closest friends or family members. You are a maintenance engineer who knew me for exactly 7 minutes before risking your life to prevent a forced marriage. Do not speak to me of fault. She moved closer, and Marcus caught that scent of ozone and starlight again. The question is not whether I have doubts. The question is why you are doing this. Marcus considered the question. It wasn't the first time someone had asked him, and he still didn't have a completely satisfactory answer. Because it's the right thing to do? That is not an answer. That is a philosophy. Maybe, Marcus admitted. Look, where I come from. We have a saying, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. I saw someone in trouble, someone being forced into something against their will, and I had the power to help. Maybe not much power, but some. So I used it. Lyralii studied his face with those burning silver eyes. Your species is very strange, Marcus Chun. Yeah, we get that a lot. The training session was interrupted by the arrival of Commander Hassan, the station's human administrator. A former military officer with graying hair and a no-nonsense attitude. She looked like someone who had dealt with more diplomatic crises than she cared to remember. Chan, she said without preamble, we need to talk. Your Highness, she added with a respectful nod to Lyralii. They moved to Hassan's office, a cramped space filled with star charts and diplomatic protocols from 24 different species. Hassan poured herself coffee from a pot that looked like it had been brewing since the station was built. All right, she began. I've spent the last 18 hours on subspace communications with Earth, the Etherian Council, and half the diplomatic corps in this sector. The good news is that your claim of championship has been verified as legal under ancient Etherian law. The bad news is that everyone thinks you're insane. How bad is the political fallout? Marcus asked. Hassan grimaced. The Etherian Empire is split between those who see this as an amusing human eccentricity and those who see it as a direct insult to their authority. The Galactic Council is watching to see how this plays out, because it could set precedents for interspecies legal disputes. And Earth. She paused to take a long drink of coffee. Earth wants to know what the hell you think you're doing. I'm trying to help someone, Marcus said simply. Noble. Stupid, but noble. Hassan turned to Lyralii. Your Highness, I have to ask, is there any chance Lord Vexton might be willing to withdraw the marriage contract? This whole situation could be resolved without bloodshed. Lyralii's skin shifted to an angry crimson. Commander Hassan, Lord Vexton sees this marriage as his path to political power. He will not withdraw willingly, and my refusal would only strengthen his position with the Council. He believes human involvement makes the situation even more favorable to him. Because he expects to kill Marcus easily, Hassan said bluntly. Yes. Hassan rubbed her temples as if fighting off a headache. Wonderful. Anything else I should know about Etherian dueling customs? The combat will take place in a neutral arena, Lyralii explained. Both combatants are allowed to choose weapons from the traditional selection. The duel continues until one participant yields or is incapacitated. What about death? Marcus asked. Death is not uncommon, Lyralii admitted reluctantly, especially when political stakes are high. Hassan stood up and walked to her window, which offered a view of the asteroid field beyond the station. Marcus, I can't order you to abandon this. Under human law, you have the right to risk your own life for whatever cause you choose. But I need you to understand the consequences if you lose. I understand. Do you? Because if Lord Vexton kills you, it won't just be a personal tragedy. It will be a demonstration to the galaxy that humans are weak, that we have no business involving ourselves in the affairs of more advanced species. It could damage human standing in the galactic community for decades. Marcus felt the weight of that responsibility settling on his shoulders. He looked at Lyralii, who was watching him with an expression he couldn't read. And if I win? He asked. Hassan turned back to him with a slight smile. If you win, Marcus, you'll have shown the galaxy that humans are not to be underestimated. You'll have given us respect we've never had before. No pressure then, Marcus muttered. Later that day, Marcus found himself in the station's archives, researching everything he could find about Etherian combat techniques. Lyralii sat beside him, occasionally explaining details that human xenobiologists had gotten wrong. This text says that Etherian warriors can manipulate plasma with their minds. Marcus said, reading from a scientific journal. Crude translation, Lyralii corrected. We do not manipulate it with our minds. We feel its flow through our bodies. Plasma is energy, and we are beings of energy. When properly trained, an Etherian warrior becomes one with their weapon. That sounds like magic. Lyralii's skin shifted to an amused golden color. Your species uses tools that harness electromagnetic fields to contain nuclear fusion, enabling faster-than-light travel. Is that magic? Point taken, Marcus conceded. So how do I fight someone who's basically one with their weapon? You do something unexpected, such as, Lyralii was quiet for a moment, her skin cycling through several colors as she thought. Vexthan is a traditionalist. He has trained extensively in classical combat forms, perfected techniques that have been used for centuries. He will expect you to attempt those same techniques poorly. And instead, you fight like a human. Marcus looked at her skeptically. I hate to break it to you, princess, but humans don't have any secret combat techniques. We're not known for our warrior culture. Are you not? Lyralii pulled up a human military history file on the archive terminal. Your species has been in constant warfare for most of your recorded history. You have developed more combat techniques, strategies, and weapon technologies than any other known species. The difference is that you adapt them constantly. She gestured to the scrolling text on the screen. Etherians perfect a technique over centuries and pass it down unchanged. Humans develop a new technique, use it for a few years, then throw it away and develop something better. Your military tactics from 50 years ago would be considered obsolete by your own standards. Marcus stared at the historical data. You're saying our weakness is actually a strength? I am saying that Vexthan has never faced an opponent who refuses to follow the rules he knows. Lyralii's eyes began to glow with excitement. He has studied every classical combat form, every traditional strategy. But he has never faced someone who might throw his weapon away and tackle him bodily, or use the environment as a weapon, or, she paused, her skin shifting to a calculating green, or turn the duel itself into something other than what he expects. What do you mean? Lyralii stood up suddenly, her movements fluid and graceful despite her excitement. Marcus, what do you know about Etherian bonding customs? Nothing. Then, we need to visit the cultural archives. I believe I know how we can win this duel before it even begins. They spent the next several hours deep in xenocultural databases, with Lyralii explaining the intricate details of Etherian society that most humans never learned. Marcus discovered that the ancient laws governing their civilization were far more complex than he had imagined. So let me get this straight, he said, rubbing his eyes after hours of reading. If I defeat Vexthan in combat, the marriage contract becomes void. But there are other ancient laws that could apply. Exactly. Lyralii's skin was practically glowing with excitement now. The law of champions states that one who stands for another in trial by combat creates a bond of honor between them. The law of victory states that one who defeats an enemy in single combat may claim certain rights over the defeated. What kind of rights? That depends on the nature of the combat. But, Marcus, she turned to face him fully. There is another law, older than both of those. The law of the plasma bond. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Which says what exactly? Which says that if a person catches a plasma bolt fired by another, and if that plasma bolt was fired in the context of a formal challenge, then, she paused, her skin shifting through several colors. Then, the two are considered bonded under ancient law. Bonded how? Married, Marcus. According to the oldest Etherian traditions, catching someone's plasma bolt in combat is equivalent to accepting a marriage proposal. Marcus stared at her in shock. Are you saying that if I catch one of Vexthan's shots during the duel, you would be married to him? Yes. Which would make the marriage contract with me invalid regardless of who wins the fight. Marcus tried to process this information. That's insane. It is also completely legal and binding under laws that predate the current council by millennia. Marcus stood up and began pacing around the small archive room. Okay, but there's one problem with this plan. How exactly am I supposed to catch a plasma bolt? Those things move at close to light speed. Lyralii's expression became serious. That, Marcus Chun, is where your unusual human reflexes will be put to the ultimate test. Outside the archives, word was spreading throughout the station that the duel would take place in less than 24 hours. Representatives from several major species had arrived to witness the event, drawn by the unprecedented nature of a human challenging Etherian nobility. In his private quarters aboard his ship, Lord Vexton was preparing his weapons and reviewing traditional combat forms. He had no doubt about the outcome of tomorrow's duel. The human would be dispatched quickly and efficiently, demonstrating the superiority of Etherian combat training to all who watched. He had no idea that his opponent was preparing for a completely different kind of fight. As station night fell, Marcus found himself on the observation deck, staring out at the stars and wondering what he had gotten himself into. Lyralii joined him there, her skin glowing softly in the darkness. "Are you ready?" she asked. Marcus looked at her, taking in the ethereal beauty, the obvious intelligence, the strength that radiated from her very being. Tomorrow he would risk his life for this woman he barely knew, using a plan that sounded like something out of an ancient myth. "No," he said honestly, "but I'm going to do it anyway." Lyralii moved closer, and for a moment Marcus thought she might touch his hand. Instead, she simply stood beside him, looking out at the stars. "Marcus," she said quietly, "whatever happens tomorrow, know that what you have done is extraordinary. You have shown courage that most beings never possess. I just hope it's enough." "It will be," she said with quiet confidence. "Because you are not just fighting for me tomorrow. You are fighting to show the galaxy what humans are capable of when they decide to stand up for what is right." Marcus nodded, still staring at the stars. Tomorrow would bring either triumph or disaster. But tonight, for just a few moments, he allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, a human maintenance worker could change the course of galactic politics. He was about to find out how right he was. The arena was nothing like Marcus had expected. Instead of some gladiatorial coliseum, it was simply a large, empty cargo bay with the bulkheads pushed back to create an open space about 50 meters square. Portable force fields hummed at the boundaries, containing the combat zone while allowing spectators to watch from elevated galleries. And there were spectators. Lots of them. Marcus had known that representatives from various species would attend, but he hadn't anticipated the crowd. The gallery was packed with beings from across the galaxy, all drawn by the unprecedented spectacle of a human challenging Etherian nobility. He spotted Zephyrian diplomats with their blue-scaled skin crackling with electrical discharge, rock-eating Gorvani whose presence made the deck plates vibrate, and insectoid Klaxi whose compound eyes tracked every movement in the arena. At the center of it all, in a place of honor reserved for Etherian nobility, sat Lord Vexton. Marcus had seen recordings of Vexton during his research, but seeing him in person was different. The Etherian lord was tall even by the standards of his species, with skin that gleamed like polished gold. His hair was silver white, flowing around his shoulders with that characteristic Etherian weightlessness. Most importantly, he moved with the fluid grace of someone who had never doubted his own superiority. "Impressive turnout," Commander Hassan commented as she checked Marcus's equipment one final time. "Half the diplomatic corps is here. Earth's representatives are watching via subspace link. No pressure." "Thanks for the pep talk," Marcus replied, adjusting the simple combat harness that would hold his weapons. Unlike Vexton's elaborate ceremonial armor, Marcus wore basic protective gear designed for human physiology. Lyralii approached, her skin shifting through nervous patterns of blue and silver. "The formal challenge will be issued in the traditional manner," she explained. "Vexton will state his claim, I will reject it, and you will declare yourself as my champion. Then, the weapons will be selected. And then, I try to catch a plasma bolt moving at nearly light speed," Marcus added. "Simple." "Marcus," Lyralii said seriously, "remember what we practiced. It is not about speed. It is about prediction. Watch his body, not his weapon." Etherians telegraph their shots through unconscious muscle movements. A chime sounded through the arena, signaling the beginning of the formal proceedings. The crowd fell silent as an elderly Etherian in judicial robes stepped forward to serve as arbiter. "We are gathered here to witness trial by combat according to the ancient laws of the Etherian people," the arbiter announced in a voice that somehow carried to every corner of the arena without amplification. Let the parties make their positions known. Lord Vexton strode to the center of the arena, his golden skin gleaming under the lights. When he spoke, his voice carried the musical harmonics that made Etherean speech so distinctive. I, Lord Vexton of the House of Stars, claim Princess Lyralii as my bride according to the marriage contract negotiated between our houses. This union serves the greater good of our people and the stability of our realm. Lyralii stepped forward, her skin flashing angry crimson. I, Princess Lyralii of the House of Moons, reject this claim. The marriage contract was negotiated without my consent and against my will. I invoke my right to trial by combat to determine my fate. The arbiter nodded. Does the princess name a champion to stand in her place? I do. I name Marcus Chun of the human people as my champion. Marcus walked to the center of the arena, feeling the weight of hundreds of alien eyes upon him. The whispers from the gallery were almost overwhelming, some in languages he recognized, others in dialects that sounded like music or static or the grinding of stone. Do you, Marcus Chun, accept the role of champion? The arbiter asked. I do. And do you understand that this combat will be to the finish, with defeat meaning either death or total incapacitation? Marcus glanced at Lyralii, who gave him an almost imperceptible nod. I understand. Vexton laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a storm. Human, you have courage, I will grant you that. Unfortunately, courage without skill is merely suicide with style. We'll see, Marcus replied. The arbiter gestured toward a display case containing traditional Etherean dueling weapons. Let the combatants choose their arms. This was the first test of Marcus's strategy. Traditional Etherean dueling called for both fighters to select matching weapons, plasma rifles, plasma swords, or the ancient plasma gauntlets that turned the wielder's entire body into a weapon. The expectation was that Marcus would choose the weapons he was least terrible with. Instead, Marcus walked to the case and selected a plasma rifle and a plasma sword. The crowd murmured in confusion. Vexton raised an eyebrow. You choose two weapons, human? He asked. Ancient law permits the selection of any traditional weapons, Marcus replied. It doesn't specify that both fighters must be armed identically. The arbiter consulted a datapad containing the full legal text. This is correct. Combatants may select any combination of traditional weapons. Vexton's skin flashed through several colors before settling on annoyed yellow. He had expected Marcus to make a poor choice among equally matched options. Instead, the human had created an asymmetrical fight. After a moment's consideration, Vexton selected a plasma sword and a small plasma shield, a combination that would let him close distance while deflecting rifle fire. The weapons were activated and tested. Marcus's rifle hummed with contained energy, its barrel glowing with barely restrained plasma. The sword was lighter than he had expected, its blade a controlled field of superheated matter that could cut through virtually anything. Take your positions, the arbiter commanded. Marcus and Vexton moved to opposite ends of the arena. The crowd fell silent, the only sound the hum of energy weapons and the station's life support systems. Begin, the arbiter called. Vexton immediately began moving, not charging directly but circling to Marcus's left with fluid grace. His movements were hypnotic, like a deadly dance that had been perfected over centuries. Marcus raised his rifle and fired. The plasma bolt streaked across the arena, but Vexton was no longer where Marcus had aimed. He had shifted direction at the exact moment Marcus pulled the trigger, the bolt passing harmlessly behind him. A second shot. A third. Each time, Vexton seemed to anticipate exactly where Marcus would aim, flowing around the plasma bolts like water around stones. The crowd was beginning to mutter. This was going exactly as everyone had expected, the human flailing away with poor marksmanship while the Etherean Lord closed distance for the kill. Marcus fired a fourth shot, deliberately aiming wide. As expected, Vexton ignored it, continuing his advance. Then, Marcus did something no one expected. He threw the rifle at Vexton's feet. The heavy weapon clattered across the deck plates, causing Vexton to stumble slightly as he avoided tripping over it. For just a moment, his perfect rhythm was broken. Marcus drew his plasma sword and charged. The crowd erupted in surprised voices. Throwing away a ranged weapon to engage in close combat was not just unorthodox. It was tactical suicide against a superior swordsman. Vexton recovered quickly, bringing his own blade up to block Marcus's attack. The plasma swords met with a crackling of energy that made the air itself seem to burn. Interesting, Vexton said as they separated and began circling each other. Crude, but interesting. Marcus said nothing, focusing entirely on watching Vexton's movements. Lyralii had been right. The Etherean Lord's attacks were technically perfect, but they followed classical patterns. His feet moved in traditional stances. His blade work followed established forms. Marcus, who had learned to fight in the back alleys of New Detroit, followed no forms at all. Their blades met again, and Marcus immediately broke away, refusing to engage in the careful, formal exchange that Vexton was trying to establish. Instead, he grabbed a piece of debris from the arena floor, a broken deck plate, and hurled it at Vexton's head. The Etherean Lord deflected it easily with his shield, but his skin flashed annoyed yellow. This was not how honorable combat was supposed to proceed. Fight with honor, human. Vexton snapped. I am fighting with honor, Marcus replied, circling to keep the discarded rifle between them. I'm just not fighting with your rules. They clashed again, blade against blade, and this time Marcus stayed in close. Vexton was clearly the superior swordsman, but Marcus had advantages the Etherean Lord wasn't used to dealing with. He was shorter, making him a smaller target. He was stronger, thanks to growing up in Earth's higher gravity. And, most importantly, he had no investment in looking graceful or following proper form. When Vexton executed a beautiful high guard that left his lower body momentarily exposed, Marcus dropped to one knee and swept the Etherean's legs. Vexton went down hard, his perfect composure finally cracking. The crowd was on its feet now, aliens of a dozen species shouting in languages Marcus couldn't understand. This was unlike any formal duel they had ever witnessed. Vexton rolled to his feet with inhuman grace, his skin now flashing angry red patterns. Enough games, human. He raised his shield hand, and Marcus saw the small plasma projector built into its surface begin to glow. This was it, the moment they had planned for. Vexton fired. The plasma bolt streaked toward Marcus's chest at a significant fraction of light speed. For any normal being, it would be impossible to avoid, let alone catch. But Marcus had spent his entire life catching things that fell. Dropped tools, thrown objects, falling debris. His hands knew how to be exactly where they needed to be at precisely the right moment. Time seemed to slow. Marcus could see the plasma bolt approaching, a coherent stream of superheated matter that would kill him instantly if he miscalculated. He could hear Lyralii's voice in his memory. Watch his body, not his weapon. Ethereans telegraph their shots. Vexton's shoulder had dipped slightly to the left just before firing. His feet had shifted to compensate for recoil. His eyes had focused on a point 6 inches to the right of where Marcus was standing. Marcus moved his hand. The plasma bolt struck his palm and stopped. For a moment, the entire arena fell silent. The bolt hung in the air, contained by Marcus's bare hand, its energy crackling against his skin without burning him. Then, the implications hit the crowd all at once. The sound was indescribable. Hundreds of beings from dozens of species all shouting, gasping, or making whatever noise their anatomy allowed for extreme surprise. In the Etherean section, several nobles had gone completely white with shock. Vexton stared at Marcus's glowing hand in absolute incomprehension. That's impossible. Humans cannot manipulate plasma. You have no natural energy fields. Marcus looked at the contained bolt, feeling its warmth against his palm. Somehow, impossibly, he was holding pure energy in his bare hand. You're right, he said, meeting Vexton's eyes. I can't manipulate it. Then, he threw the plasma bolt back. Vexton barely got his shield up in time. The returned bolt struck the shield and dissipated, but the impact staggered him backward. By the ancient law of plasma bond, Marcus announced in a voice that carried throughout the arena, I have caught Lord Vexton's combat fire. According to traditions older than your current council, this creates a binding between us. The arbiter was frantically consulting his legal databases. The law is unclear on the matter of cross-species bonding. The law, came a new voice from the gallery, is quite clear. Everyone turned to see an ancient Etherean rising from the observers section. Her skin was pure silver, almost translucent with age, and, when she spoke, even the other Etherians fell silent. "I am High Arbiter Zelthara," she announced. "I have served as keeper of the ancient laws for 300 years. The law of plasma bond recognizes no species distinction. When one being catches another's combat fire, they are bound according to the oldest traditions of our people." Vexton's skin had gone completely white. "High Arbiter, surely you cannot mean—" "I mean exactly what the law states, Lord Vexton. You have fired upon this human in formal combat, and he has caught your fire. By ancient law, you are now bonded to him." The arena erupted again. Marcus looked around at the chaos, then at Lyralii, who was staring at him with an expression of amazement and something that might have been admiration. "So," he called to Vexton over the noise, "I guess that makes the marriage contract with Princess Lyralii invalid, doesn't it?" Vexton looked like he was about to be sick. This cannot be. I demand a recount of the laws." High Arbiter Zelthara smiled, an expression that somehow managed to be both kindly and absolutely merciless. "The laws have been recounted, Lord Vexton. You are bound to this human according to traditions that predate your house by millennia. The marriage contract with Princess Lyralii is hereby declared void." Marcus walked over to where his discarded rifle lay and picked it up. "Just out of curiosity," he said to Vexton, "how exactly does Etherean divorce law work?" The question sent Vexton into what appeared to be a complete mental breakdown. The proud lord began muttering to himself in rapid Etherean, his skin cycling through colors so quickly it was making some of the observers dizzy. "Actually," High Arbiter Zelthara said with that same terrifying smile, "according to the most ancient laws, divorce requires mutual consent of both bonded parties. And since Lord Vexton challenged you to this combat specifically to claim a bride through force." She let the implication hang in the air. Marcus grinned. "So unless he can convince me to agree to a divorce, he's stuck married to a human maintenance worker?" "That is correct." Vexton let out a wail that sounded like a dying star. Lyralii approached Marcus, her skin glowing with what he was learning to recognize as delighted amusement. "You realize," she said quietly, "that you have just humiliated one of the most powerful lords in the Etherean Empire?" "Yeah," Marcus replied, watching Vexton try to argue with High Arbiter Zelthara about the legality of laws that were literally carved in stone before his ancestors were born. "But I also freed you from an unwanted marriage and proved that humans aren't to be underestimated." "That you did." Lyralii moved closer, and Marcus caught that scent of ozone and starlight again. "There is just one problem, which is, according to the same ancient laws, as my champion, you have certain rights over me." Marcus felt his stomach drop. "What kind of rights?" Lyralii's skin shifted to a warm golden color, and her eyes began to glow with that silver fire. "Well, traditionally, a champion who successfully defends someone's honor in combat is entitled to claim a favor from the person they defended." "A favor?" "Any favor," she confirmed. "Within reason." Marcus looked at her, taking in the ethereal beauty, the obvious intelligence, the strength that radiated from her very being. An alien princess was offering to grant him any favor he asked for. "In that case," he said finally, "I'd like to ask you out to dinner." Lyralii blinked in surprise, her skin cycling through several colors before settling on pleased gold. "Dinner? Yeah. Nothing fancy, just dinner. Maybe we could talk, get to know each other better. I mean, we've been through a lot together, but I still don't know your favorite food or what you like to do for fun. You defeated one of the most powerful lords in my empire, humiliated him in front of the entire galactic diplomatic community, and freed me from an unwanted marriage," Lyralii said slowly. "And you want to use your reward to ask me on a date?" Marcus shrugged. "What can I say? I'm a simple guy with simple desires." Lyralii laughed. "That sound like silver bells in a gentle breeze." "Marcus-chun, I am beginning to understand why your species has such a reputation for being unpredictable. Is that a yes?" "That is definitely a yes." Around them, the arena was slowly emptying as aliens of various species departed to spread word of what they had witnessed. Diplomatic couriers were already heading for their ships, carrying news that would reshape galactic politics for generations to come. In one day, A human maintenance worker had challenged the Aetherian Empire, exposed the limitations of traditional combat thinking, and proven that humans were capable of far more than anyone had imagined. He had also managed to get himself accidentally married to an Aetherian lord, but that was a problem for another day. Right now, Marcus Chun had a date with a princess. As they walked out of the arena together, Lyraliai's skin glowing with contentment, and Marcus still carrying the plasma rifle he'd thrown away and picked up again, Commander Hassan shook her head in amazement. "Well," she said to her aide, "that's definitely going in the incident report." Behind them, Lord Vexton was still arguing with High Arbiter Zelthara about the possibility of annulment, while the ancient Keeper of Laws patiently explained that some traditions were more binding than others. It was, everyone agreed, the most interesting duel in Aetherian history. And, for Marcus Chun, it was just the beginning.